Hear me, O people of the earth. Hear me, you who dwell in comfort and forgetfulness. You who have grown weary of the ancient promises and have turned your faces from the God who formed you from the dust. For there is a word rising in the wilderness. There is a sound, low at first, like the distant rumble of thunder beyond the mountains of Ararat, and it is growing. It is a sound your fathers heard and their fathers before them, and it is the sound of something that was lost being found again. Something buried beneath centuries of silence and stone and the scorn of men who called themselves wise. The Ark is returning. Not as myth, not as metaphor, not as the idle fable of desert wanderers who knew nothing of science and reason. No, the Ark of Noah, that great vessel carved by obedient hands, sealed with pitch, lifted upon the face of the deep. Its story is not finished. Its echoes have not ceased. For the God who commanded one man to build against all reason, against all mockery, against all the voices of a world that laughed, that same God does not abandon what he has begun. And you, standing here now, watching this, you were not brought to this moment by accident. There are no accidents in the economy of the Almighty. So before you turn away, before you dismiss what your spirit is already beginning to sense, stay. Listen. For what is about to be revealed will shake something loose in the deep places of your soul. The waters remember, and so will you. But before we go further, before we descend into the depths of this ancient story and draw up its living waters, I ask one thing of you. If you are someone who hungers for truth that goes beyond the surface, if you are someone who has felt in the quiet of the night that there is more to this world than what the textbooks offer and what the headlines shout, then this channel was built for you. Click that subscribe button, ring the bell, join the thousands who have chosen to sit at the feet of these ancient texts and let them speak. We do not come here to entertain. We come here to encounter. Every week, we return to the Word, to the stories that shaped civilization, that carved empires, that whispered to prophets in the dark. And we ask, what is God still saying? Subscribe, and let us seek together. Cast your mind back, not to yesterday, not to the age of your grandparents, but to a time so distant that the mountains themselves had not yet settled into their places, to a world so unlike our own that even the air tasted different. This was the world before the flood. The book of Genesis, that incomparable opening of all scripture, does not linger long in the days before Noah. It speaks of them in measured, weighty tones, the way a survivor speaks of a catastrophe carefully, with the grief of someone who was there. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. Read those words again. Every imagination, only evil continually. This is not the language of a culture in mild moral decline. This is the language of total spiritual collapse. The world had not merely drifted from righteousness, it had abandoned it entirely. The image of God in man, that sacred imprint breathed into Adam in the garden, had been so distorted, so defaced that the Creator himself grieved. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. Genesis 6:6. The God who does not change, who sits outside of time itself, who sees the end from the beginning, grieved. Let that word arrest you. Let it slow your breathing. Because if the Eternal One was moved to sorrow by what he saw, then what was happening on the earth in those days was not merely bad policy or cultural regression.
It was a wound in the heart of heaven. And yet, in that same chapter, in the very shadow of judgment, there is this line, this extraordinary, luminous line. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Genesis 6:8. The word for grace here, chen in the Hebrew, is tender, unearned, freely given. It is the grace of a father who looks upon a wayward world and finds, in one man and his household, something worth preserving, something that still bears the image, something still listening. Noah did not earn his rescue. He received it. And what was asked of him in return? Build.
Consider for a moment what it meant to be Noah. He was not a sailor. There is no indication in the text that he lived near the sea, that he had ever constructed a vessel, that he possessed any maritime expertise whatsoever. He was a man of the soil, a man of family, a man who walked with God, which is the highest commendation the ancient scribes could offer, and who suddenly found himself tasked with the most audacious construction project in human history. The Lord spoke, and the instructions that came were precise, technical, overwhelming. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch. And this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Genesis 6:14-15. Scholars and engineers have long marveled at these dimensions, 300 cubits in length, approximately 450 feet by modern reckoning, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high, a vessel of roughly 43,000 cubic feet of space. A boat so large that similar proportions would not be seen again in human shipbuilding until the late 19th century. And Noah built it. Alone, or nearly so. With his sons without power tools, without cranes, without the institutional support of governments or guilds, while the world around him watched and mocked and called him a fool. The ancient Jewish tradition preserved in the writings of Josephus tells us that Noah preached during those years of construction, that he pleaded with his generation to turn from their wickedness, that he was, in a very real sense, a prophet of the coming flood, a voice in the wilderness long before John the Baptist ever walked out of the Judean desert. They did not listen, but the ark rose, board by board, cubit by cubit, year after year. Some traditions say it took Noah 120 years to build the ark. The great vessel took shape on dry ground, a monument to obedience, a scandal to reason, a declaration that one man believed God, even when God's words seemed impossible. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. Hebrews 11:7. There it is. The author of Hebrews, writing centuries later, understood something about Noah that we must not miss. His obedience was itself a verdict. The ark was not only a lifeboat. It was a sermon preached in wood and pitched to a generation that refused to hear. Then came the animals, and here the narrative takes on a quality that defies all attempts to reduce it to mere allegory. For what we are told is this: they came to him. Of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shall you bring into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds after their kind, of animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every kind will come to you, to keep them alive. Genesis 6:19-20.
They came to him. The lion and the lamb, the eagle and the serpent, the elephant and the mouse. Something ancient and instinctual stirred in the created world, as if creation itself recognized that a door was opening, and that only those who entered would survive what was coming. There is something here for those who have eyes to see throughout Scripture. When God prepares a place of refuge, He draws those who belong there. The children of Israel to the promised land, the prodigal son to his father's house, the disciples to the upper room, the sheep to the shepherd's voice. God does not merely issue invitations, He orchestrates arrivals. When Noah received the animals, he was not simply filling a zoo. He was participating in the preservation of the breath of life on earth. He was a steward of creation in the most literal sense imaginable. Every species that survived the flood survived, because one obedient man said yes to an impossible task. When was the last time your obedience preserved something you could not see?
Then the rains came. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Genesis 7:11. Notice the precision. The scribes gave us a date, not a vague sense of once upon a time, but a specific calendrical notation. This happened. This was real. This was recorded by people who understood that the specific nature of the event mattered. That truth, unlike myth, has coordinates. The fountains of the great deep were broken up. Ancient cosmology understood the earth as holding vast reservoirs of water beneath its crust. Not merely rain falling from above, but geological eruption from below. The flood, in this telling, was not merely meteorological. It was tectonic. It was catastrophic at a planetary level. For 40 days and 40 nights it rained. And then, silence. Imagine the silence inside the ark. The creaking of wood under impossible pressure. The sound of water everywhere, above, beneath, all around. And in the midst of it, one family. One man and his wife, his sons and their wives. 8 souls, 8 people, out of all the teeming billions who would walk the earth. And animals and the breath of life. And God. Then God remembered Noah, and every living thing, and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. Genesis 8:1. God remembered Noah. This is one of the most beautiful phrases in all of Scripture. Not because God had forgotten. The Eternal One does not forget. But because in the language of the ancient Hebrews, to remember someone was to act on their behalf, to move toward them, to let your favor fall upon them once more. God remembered Noah, and the wind came. And slowly, over 150 days, the waters receded. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the ark rested in the 7th month, the 17th day of the month, on the mountains of Ararat. Genesis 8:4. Ararat, that word, has haunted explorers, theologians, archaeologists, and dreamers for millennia. The mountains of Ararat, a range in what is modern-day eastern Turkey, have been the destination of countless expeditions, each one hoping to find what no camera has yet conclusively captured, what no government has fully confirmed, but what an extraordinary number of eyewitnesses across centuries have claimed to have seen: the remains of the ark. But we are not yet to that chapter of the story. Not quite yet. First, Noah waited. As the waters continued to recede, he sent out a raven, that dark, restless bird, which flew back and forth but brought no news of dry ground. Then a dove, gentle and true. The first time, she returned with nothing. The second time, and close your eyes and see this moment, she returned with an olive leaf freshly plucked, new growth, new life. A world beginning again. Then he knew that the waters had receded from the earth. Genesis 8:11. The third time he sent the dove, she did not return. She had found her home in the renewed world. And Noah opened the door of the ark. What Noah did first, when he stepped onto dry ground, tells us everything we need to know about who he was. He built an altar. Not a house, not a storehouse, not a fence, an altar. He took some of every clean animal and offered burnt offerings to the Lord. And the scripture says that the Lord smelled a soothing aroma, and he spoke. And what he spoke was the first great covenant of scripture. I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Genesis 9:11. And the sign of that covenant? A bow placed in the clouds, the rainbow, that arc of light that appears after rain, was designated by God himself as the signature of his promise. Every time clouds gathered and rain fell, and the ancient fear might stir again, the bow would appear, a reminder not for man alone, but for God himself. I will remember my covenant. Genesis 9:15. This is the God we serve, a God who binds himself to his word, a God who makes promises and marks them in light across the sky, a God who does not abandon his covenant, even when his people forget it. Now we must ask the question that this entire story has been pressing toward. Why does the ark matter now? In our generation, this strange, turbulent, searching generation, why should we turn our eyes toward a wooden vessel buried beneath glacial ice on a mountain in Turkey? Because the ark was never just history, it was prophecy. Jesus himself said, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man." They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Luke 17:26-27. He was not offering a history lesson. He was giving a warning. He was saying, there is a pattern. There is a spiritual logic to history. And when you see that pattern repeating, when you see a world that has turned its face from God, that is drowned in the noise of its own indulgence, that scoffs at the builders and the preachers and the ones who seem foolish in their obedience, know this: something is coming. But also know this: the ark is being built again. Not in wood, not on a mountain, but in the hearts of those who, like Noah, walk with God in a crooked generation, who build what they are called to build, even when no one understands, who preach by the way they live, who preserve what God has entrusted to them. The ark returns not as a relic to be found by explorers with satellite imagery and ice axes, though that search continues, and its day may yet come. The ark returns as a type, a shadow, a living pattern that speaks to every generation that has ears to hear. You are the generation that is hearing it now. The question is not whether the flood is coming. The question, the only question that matters, is whether you are building by faith, moved with godly fear. He prepared. Are you preparing? We have walked together through the deep waters of this story, through the grief of God and the obedience of one man, through a world that perished in a covenant written in light, through warnings spoken 2,000 years ago that are echoing in our streets today. And now, as this video draws to its close, I want to look you in the eye, through this screen, across whatever distance separates us, and say something plainly. You did not stumble onto this channel by accident. There is a hunger in you, I know it, because it is the same hunger that drives the making of these videos. The hunger to understand, to know the God behind the text, to find the thread that connects Eden to Ararat, to Calvary, to the moment you are living right now. That thread is real, and we pull on it together here every week. If this video stirred something in you, if the story of the Ark opened something in your spirit that you want to keep opening, then I invite you to take the next step. Click the video on your screen right now. We have prepared the next chapter of this journey for you. The story does not end at Ararat. It never ends. It only deepens. Subscribe if you have not already. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell us, what are you building in this season? Because the Ark is rising, the waters are coming, and grace, unearned, ancient, freely given, is still extended. Go in peace and build.